Hello, hello. I just want to do something a little different here. So I've recently finished this sketch, and I've colored it and shaded it, and it got me thinking, like, well, there are many ways I could have taken the sketch. I could have experimented with a bit more and played around with some varied looks, to say the least, and I just want to show what kind of looks I was thinking of, and maybe it might help you to, if you've completed a sketch or a drawing, to just take it a little bit more into not a finished look, but maybe a refined, experimental look. So it transcends what a sketch is, and rather it becomes something more. At least I think. So if I just remove all of this stuff, we're just left with a line. Now, lines are my favorite thing in the world. I love using lines. I don't rarely, or if any, I rarely paint or fully render my stuff, mainly because I find the most joy comes from just the line work. And, it's a little bit messy here, but that's okay. So, just by looking at the lines, what can we do with it? Well, a very basic thing we can end up doing with line is simply coloring it. And so usually in the societal sphere of art, once a sketch is completed, usually the line work is either of the dark or black color. Well, it takes on a different form if we just, simply start changing the color of it. It's starting to look a little bit different. It starts standing out a bit. We can change the hue, we can change the saturation to be a bit different like this. And now, just by shifting and changing the color like this, I feel like it's starting to shift and become more than just a sketch of a character. We're starting to see some real design elements into it without adding any complete flat pass with colors or shading, simply by just changing the line color. So that's something to consider when you're doing your sketches and you want to just try experiment a little bit more. So let's just say if I choose something here, let's see, I kind of was drawn towards more of a warmer tone like this. Looks a bit different here. So let's say you have this stage here. It's like, okay, Alan, changing colors, big deal, right? Well, if I create a new layer on top of it, and I can actually go back in with a different color, and I can, but without shading it, I can just start tinting the colors or changing the colors within the lines itself. So I can almost go in and clip the layer, the top layer to the bottom layer, so it only shows like this. So now I can go in, and let's just say where all the shadows are going to meet, I can just, color it a darker color. Now, of course, I can change the color like this. I can change any color. So I'm just kind of giving this some form and contour, just like that. And I feel like this will make it stand out a little bit more. So perhaps where the ambient occlusion, if you're familiar with the term, would be, or perhaps where two parts would meet, I'll make it a bit darker like that. Or if there's certain areas I want to emphasize, I can just color it like this. And it's okay if you're not, getting all the lines. It's completely fine. We're trying to think of aesthetic choices here. So that maybe around here we can, where the belt meets, like that. And you can hopefully see where I'm going with this slightly. Alright, so we have that. Let's scroll back out. Now you can see it's cool. It's kind of already taking some shape and form. It looks very deliberate in a sense. Let's do that. Of course, I can also go back and change this line color to something a bit different. So let's say if I move this up, can I switch it from here? No, I will have to. There's an option here to do that, to convert to drawing color. Convert. There used to be a thing where you can change line color, but I seem to have forgotten where it is. Where are you? Are you here? Forgive me. Where is it? Convert to drawing color? Oh, that's it. convert to drawing color. They changed the name, I think. So now I can hue shift. There we go. There we go. So I can start hue shifting this around to. You can start seeing like it's starting to give off a different form. Well, that's really cool, huh? You can do that. What else can you do? Well, we have the background to consider too, without giving too much change to the lines itself. We can change what is underneath it. So currently it's just white, but we can change it to any color we want. So we can have it like this. This looks really cool in itself. Very striking. We could just start hue shifting it around to get different elements. That's looking like a different kind of sketch. Very cool. Let me just remove these darker lines here so we can see that. And it's like a cool inverse effect to it happening. So if we inverse this, and then if we make this a bit brighter, so interesting how like if we have like a darker thing like that, and this is probably if you're a professional artist, you're like, oh come on, this is all like baby stuff, but I think it's also cool to consider. Like you can really play around with this stuff just to show you that it's possible, where you can really sort things out like this. So now with color theory, I'm just kind of using complementary colors to like bring it out a bit. So this looks really cool. Now, where else can we take it from here? Well, we are able to change the line color, able to change the background color. Well, we can select the background, inverse select it so that we only have the character selected and fill that with a different color. So what I mean by that, I'll show you here. So let's say I click on this, and let's just make sure it's only applying to the connected. And then I inverse this selection. Whoops. I inverse this. So now only this fella is selected in here. So if I fill this up, now we can play around with this and start seeing what cool things await. Now it's really changing in terms of like just from a baseline sketch, and all we've done was change the color of the lines, the background, and now we're coloring the interior of the character. Really cool stuff, eh? We can play around with this. We can, move around. There's like infinite possibilities in terms of color schemes. It looks more harmonious this way, and I am really enjoying that. So there we go. Well, how do we go beyond this now? Like, okay, Alan, we've colored the lines, the background, and the foreground. How can I take this more? Where can I go from this? Well, I showed you that you can color inside the lines, but now we can start thinking of inverting lines or creating interesting shapes on top of the character. Not really thinking about the shadow form or anything, but let's say if we think of abstract shapes to overlay on the character, that upon intersection with the line, we can inverse it. What do I mean by that? Well, let's show you. So let's say I will go underneath here, create a new layer, and I'm just going to use let's just use a plain rectangle, just to show you. And let's just cut the character in half like that. Now, if we click on this, change this to a different color, and make this, let's say, slightly darker, you can see like even just a plain shape here, there's some really cool lines happening. Like this looks bright to dark, and we're still having the same line color throughout. But if I select or marquee select the geometric shape, go to my line layer, and let's say if I inverse this to a different color, close it, you can see it creates an interesting color. Now we can take this kind of technique and use it for shadows now. Like if we actually describe the form, we can draw the geometric shapes where the character would be, and on top of doing the shadow color, we can do the line color as well, which should start creating very interesting variations within the sketch. It becomes really exciting, and it introduces more play, which sometimes I feel like can often be lost once you've designed and sketched a character. You almost like running a marathon, you just want to see it like till the end. Personally, I've never run a marathon, but there used to be like, like close to the end, you're like, the end is in sight, and you're like, oh, do I get second wind, or I'm getting really tired now. At least those are the stories circulating. All right, so let's play with that in terms of describing a form or describing the form. So I'm just going to delete this and let's go to the Lasso Tool. I love using the Lasso Tool to describe my form because I am designing my shadow shapes as opposed to trying to paint them. I'm just having fun with the form of the shapes itself, and the shadow itself becomes part of the character as I am treating it like a character, as opposed to something that is just there or part of like the world. I don't want to say consciously thinking about the shapes, but I'm feeling it out. And it was a lot of trial and error getting here, so you might have to think about how shapes would describe things, but once it becomes intuitive, it's really fun. So we can also, a cool thing with this is like you can either use the lasso tool like this or the polyline, and both give very different effects. For this instance, I'm going to use the lasso tool because I like the more organic form. It looks slightly messier, but it's just something I enjoy. So let's just say I'm going to create a shadow here. You can see, like, just trying to describe the form. So the shadow I would like would be coming like this to cast. And I'm just going to do this really fast just because it is a demonstration purpose here. So you can see I'm trying to just describe the form in an interesting way. Yeah, it's like very much like a character. I like to sketch loose, and I guess I like to paint loose. It was something. It sounded like there was going to be something rad to say, but nope, just something lame. Alright, so it's going to describe the form like this. Really fast again, like years of just using this technique. It's starting to be a little intuitive. It's not accurate at all, but there is a certain aesthetic to it that is really appealing to me. And that's art. You can just like make it your own, Of course, when I give all this kind of like advice or techniques, this isn't the definitive way to do things. This is just an alternate way to think about things. And I encourage anyone in pursuit of just personal artwork and growth as an artist to just always try and push the boundaries and try new things out, because you never know what kind of new things will inspire you. There's so much out there, so much out there. So let us just quickly add this here and then some bolts here. And so one of the cool tools you can use too is like the threshold tool or the cutout tool when you're looking at references, because then you'll only see two tones and you're able to try and describe form or learn new shapes. So let's say with bolts, you can see I'm always doing this kind of like U shape because the light is going to hit here and I'll cast a shadow underneath. I've learned that by using the threshold tool. When I'm looking for new shapes to use in my shadows, that's what I like to use, and I think memorize. I think I've talked to this in the past. I'm very symbol based, which is relying heavily on trial and error. There's a bit of understanding there too. All right, so we've lassoed our whole character. I am lazy, so instead of filling it in, I'll just copy this. Paste it again, you can see here, multiply, and now we have our shadowed character here. Again, that was fairly fast. The form itself, the shadows itself are not accurate if you track a few things, but I would like to, take an artistic liberties. Actually, I kind of want to have a shadow going like this here. Which means I have to copy this, paste it, and there we go, like that. And maybe have a shadow here. See, now I'm nitpicking a bit. There we go. Okay. So, this looks cool too. just like with a plain line like that. But let's continue on. Let's muster on with our initial goal that we had, which was to have the shadow selection, but have the line within the shadows modulate in color. So we're going to select our line layer, and let's just see what happens when we modulate him. That looks super cool. Really cool. See, I haven't... That's kind of neat. There's some really cool things happening there. Really like that. This one really spoke to me here. So we can also go back to white just to describe the form, or we can go really saturated like that. But I kind of liked it when it was just subtle hints. Do we want to go darker? Go lighter? Now we're playing with value as well. There we go. Now, so what have we done here? Well, only using basically we have a flat color. We modulate the line colors. We've created a shadow form, and within the shadows itself, we've changed the line color. That's really cool and exciting. That's awesome, right? Just to be able to play like this has some really beautiful moments over here. And all we're doing is shifting the color of the line. And as you can see over the shadow, the reason why I like using the shadow selection is you get some really cool color modulation from here to here. I think that's really striking. Of course now, since we have this all in a single layer, we can always hue shift this and see what other forms we can get. That's very vaporwave kind of look. We can play around with this and see what other exciting new forms can happen. Since this is just very basic in its entirety, the simplicity of it lends itself to iterations and allows for more play. Like this, I really like the look of this a lot. That looks really cool. Now I can also go in here to the normal, or the actual flat color of my knight character, and just hue shift it around until something else happens. Or something clicks. See, now I'm like, okay, cool, that looks cool. Like the light hitting him, or hitting it, or... Alright, let's see what... The blue, very striking. So, I was really feeling towards this maroon and red. And we can play around with this. That's really neat. We go over here now with the background, we do the same thing. Let's see what else we can find here. Go a bit darker. And like that. And here we have something, actually, something I think is better than better than my initial thing that I started out with. It's really very appealing, I think, personally. Where you have modulation of the line color, you have interesting tone, the striking shadows that aren't really conforming to any lighting situation, but it's describing a form. So you're cheating. I mean, there's some nice moments back here. So what else? How do you go beyond this technique? Well, we've colored the whole character here. What you can end up doing now is selecting various parts of your character and filling the color and just repeating all the steps. I've kind of gave a high-level view of what you're able to do to modulate your sketch into something very appealing or interesting, that you'll hopefully be happy with at the end, as opposed to just having a black and white sketch. You can start playing around with these various techniques, and then maybe make it your own, and you might find other cool things to integrate into it, and then you're experimenting and having fun again. And I think that's the true nature of art, to be able to express and have fun rather than be caught up in all this frustration. So let's just quickly bash some neat colors in here. So let's just say I'm going to select this color here, maybe the shoulder pauldrons or paldrons, and let's say these greaves. Let's do that, and look what happens when I just say start hue shifting them. We can see now that our character is starting to, again, take a whole new form. Of course, you can go in here and start balancing things out. So this is a very different way of working, but now I can start looking at the character. I'm like, okay, cool. So I have kind of like not really too saturated here, but I can play with the saturation as opposed to just like hue shifting it around. All the saturation will be the same. But if I start playing with the saturation on top of the hue and maybe on top of the luminosity, then we're starting to get some very interesting variations with the character itself. It won't feel too samey or too mid-tony. A lot of mistakes I've done in the past when I was learning art or learning to do these things is like I'd always just hue shifted within the hue, and it kind of just always looked samey. And the reason for that was because I wasn't considering saturation and luminosity, and that creates really interesting contrasts and dichotomies and relationships and synergies and all these buzzwords that I'm going to continue to say. So let's move these around here. So this is really speaking to me personally, like this nice blue color. So we'll add that in. I'll probably just like select these nubs, whatever you want to call these things here. That's it. That's all the nubs. I only put those nubs. All right, so we're gonna quickly hue shift these to something interesting. The blue is kind of cool. Here, that's kind of neat. And of course, this is going to be a different nub color, but that's completely fine. I'm not too concerned about that. I'd rather have unexpected results than control every facet of the sketch, because I feel like it's gonna suck all the oxygen out of the room and like suck the creativity out of me if I start becoming too hyper focused on the end result, as opposed to letting it breathe and allow some fun variations to happen and unexpected results. Those unexpected results then lead to me being excited and happy and inspired again to try this technique more and more. Again, like this may be completely against the way you work, and it might not be may not agree with you, and that's completely fine. Art is subjective, and there are many facets to it. But what I offer here is just an alternative trick or alternative way of thinking, of approaching art. And you can like integrate it, you can dismiss it. It's completely fine. There are no wrong answers in art. Unless you're getting paid to do it, then you're at the whims of whoever's paying you, or the project, or the lead visionary. And these kind of techniques may help in pre-production, but I like to use these techniques for my own growth as a personal artist. Here we go. That's kind of cool. Just maybe to wrap up this thing really fast here, I'm just going to grab the plume. Actually, maybe grab this piece. No, actually, let's grab, yes, this. And let's grab this and this. And let's hue shift this. Whoop. And yep, hue shift this. Let's see what we can find here. That's kind of cool. That's really cool. Saturation a bit lower. Cool too. See, there's so many cool iterations. Let's do that. Okay. So, another cool trick I will leave with you guys is previously when we created these colors up here, all these purple colors, as you can see here, it was primarily based on the single color. But now, since everything shifted, excuse me, since everything shifted, I want to reflect those changes within the shadow color itself. And this technique, if you do this technique where you just color everything one color and put multiply, is completely fine. If you like the aesthetic to that, by all means continue to do this. But I would like to show you another way, or maybe another alternate that you can try out. And the reason why I've shifted from doing a single color to the technique I'm going to show you now is because I feel like it gives more vibrancy, the chromaticness of it. Even that's a buzzword. It looks right to me, if that makes sense. Or I just like the look of it in the end. So I'm just going to select the shadow selections, copy this and paste it. And so I've now, instead of just having this all within purple, which was it was before here, now it's shifted based on the hue shifts I've done. So now if I put this into multiply, you can see it's very slight, but there are some nice chromatic changes as opposed to this. And it might be really hard to see here. So like everything feels kind of samey to me, but then it's ever so slightly different. So I can show you even more. And so let's say if I hue shift this, for example, let's make this a bit lighter here so it's a bit more evident. You can see it has this kind of like matted look throughout. But if I go over here and start hue shifting this, and let's say make this a bit lighter, you can see within the shadows of, let's say, the blues or something, you can see like it adds some really neat variations. Subtle, like, oh yeah, you can see it like changing a lot in the reds as well here, and the blues. Even from here to here, you can see it's changing the chromatic or the hue a lot because it's using the actual color underneath it as opposed to like a flat color. And I personally find the aesthetics to be really, really appealing to me. You can find something interesting here, and you can always like take that into a painting, hey? And let's see what happens if we just start hue shifting this finally here. I kind of like that. So there you go. Hopefully you've learned something and are excited to try experimenting now, or experimenting more with these techniques, so you can take your finished sketch to just elevate it a little bit more into something. However, if you just like the the plain look, that's completely fine too. Like we can always like get rid of all these other things. Like even this in itself looks kind of cool. All right, thank you.